The mid 2000s was a hell of a time to be into gaming, and it was even better if you were into horror gaming. We had some rather remarkable games come out, such as Haunting Grounds, Manhunt, and even Bioshock. One game kind of sucked the air out of the room, though, and that was Resident Evil 4. Today, we're not talking about that gem, we're talking about one of the casualties caused from that release. After the release of a game called Tulip, which was a weird kissing, dating sim released on the PS2, Punchline wanted to make something new. The game had only gotten average reviews in the United States, and after that, Sony actually came knocking asking for something, again, different. They wanted a horror game, something exclusive to the PlayStation 2 because at the time, Resident Evil 4 was just going to be a GameCube exclusive. They wanted their own. Punchline had some decisions to make. What they opted to do was not go for the next zombie killing game like a lot of other studios have attempted, but wanted to go more the Silent Hill route, something a little bit more psychological and thought-provoking. The game went through a lot of different changes over time. When they were finished, the story was about a young girl named Jennifer and the horrible life that basically she had. The game takes place in this very surreal world in which Jennifer has to interact with her environment and basically learn about her past at the same time you do. You can't trust any of the narrative because a lot of things are done through symbolic means and not just a straight driven A to B story. You can't even trust the setting of this game because it takes place both on an airship and in an orphanage and it bounces back and forth. Over the course of the game, we actually learn a lot about Jennifer's past, including why she blocked it all out. And we get to see all the elements of torment through the red crayon aristocrat society. That's a mouthful. The game itself is very stylized, and it actually invokes a lot of the same feelings I got when playing the Silent Hill games. Wild and crazy monster designs were used to go through and actually show trauma that the story couldn't directly state. One of my favorite examples was the mermaid princess. What the Oh. Well, that's lovely. This thing wasn't exactly a mermaid, but actually a tormented version of Clara, another young girl at the orphanage. Her legs were bound together with her feet being exposed, kind of looking like fins. She's topless, but all sexuality has been removed through acts of cutting and stitching and what looks to be different surgical procedures. There's been a lot of discussions as what this boss actually means and can possibly symbolize. One of the discussions involves how the ropes are actually a way for her to bind herself together in hopes that the headmaster of the orphanage would just stop abusing her. It's pretty hard stuff to swallow. The game that Punchline created is actually something that I find to be very important because it tackles a lot of things that most games today aren't ready to even attempt. Narratively, it's something that even I struggled with at times.
Where is my shame when I call your name?
Punchline managed to tackle a lot of subjects that a lot of games really just don't have the guts to even attempt these days. All of the forms of abuse that were discussed in this game were done with such finesse and tact that I would like to see more of. Even though I love what Punchline did, this is the last game they produced and was probably the nail in their coffin. This may be a controversial opinion, but I feel this game was a much better spiritual successor to the first and second Silent Hill game than The Room ever could manage. Even the game's decision to have Jennifer as the main character really had that Silent Hill vibe. He wasn't some badass that could kill every creature on the screen, and more often than not, you really wanted to avoid the combat whenever you could. One of the game's mechanics is very similar to that of Haunting Grounds. You get a dog companion that will go throughout the game with you. A lot of the games at the time really didn't use this mechanic. Brown simply wasn't just an AI you got to control, but he actually drove the story forward in a lot of areas, and you create emotional bond with this unreal animal. A lot seemed to have gone wrong for this game. One thing that people point to is that Resident Evil 4 created this vacuum in the horror genre, and frankly, that excuse only goes so far. You can't use it forever. A lot of other horror titles came and went around the same time, and they seemed to do just fine. If anything, I think Resident Evil helped the genre. This one just simply didn't stand out, at least not in a good way. People were over the style of combat that was presented in Rule of Rose. It very much was the old Silent Hill style of playing games. Watching some of the combat sequences alone, I think, would actually turn away a lot of modern gamers, which is not a good sign. Oh, come on. Come on. The game is actually... There's too many on screen. Brad Galloway went to say, the gameplay is widely lambasted as clumsy, archaic, and unrewarding. I kind of agree. The biggest thing that hurt Rule of Rose wasn't the game itself, but an actual campaign to get it canceled and banned in many areas. Poland pushed very hard to make sure that young audiences would not be able to touch this game. In France, a bill was created to make sure that the game was going to be banned because they felt like the whole point was to torture young girls, which couldn't be further from the truth. They clearly did not play the game. In the European Union, they also had some massive problems. Justice Minister Franco Frattini said the game was obscene and were pushing for a PEGI system to be changed to help block these games' releases. A member of the European Parliament pushed for a resolution for the game to be banned and illegal to sell. 505 Games, in response to this, decided to cancel the game's release there due to the issues. The Video Standards Council went to say the game should get a 16+, saying that the complaints of the council was unfounded. Australia and New Zealand still don't have this game for sale. Red Ant Enterprises were in charge of the distribution in this area. They never bothered putting the game in front of the ratings board, and without that, you legally can't sell the game. It was never released over there either. The United States also had some issues. The company that actually wanted the game to be made, Sony, decided they weren't going to publish the game over here, citing they felt like it had erotic undertones. Basically, they asked for a game they weren't even going to back. This game, unless you're a horror junkie or a PS2 fanatic like myself, is definitely a forgotten gem. It didn't do well on release, and it's really hard to get a legit copy these days. I have a copy, unfortunately, it's not real. Basically just a burned disc. Of course, this isn't what I want, and I'm not very proud to have this copy, but when I get my own legit copy of it, I plan on putting it in a shadow box. The fake and the original. At this point, I'm sure this is a shocker, but I have a Rule of Rose tattoo on my shin. The game affected me a lot, and I actually cried on stream. I had to shut off my camera, so for me, this game was definitely important to play and experience. Thank you for watching my video on Rule of Rose. I greatly appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Until next time, long days, pleasant nights, and may you have twice the number.